Welcome everyone to Township Future Speaker Series. Tonight we're very honored to have with us again John Powers. As many of you know, John has a long history with the Woodlands. We have a very exciting topic for you tonight, the Parks and Recreation Department of the Woodlands, which many might consider it to be the crown jewel of the Woodlands. And certainly I think tonight's presentation, you'll walk away possibly with that same thought process. So John's going to go over the history of the Parks and Recreation, some accolades that we might have received over the years, and how we fit into the grander scheme, if you will. So we don't want to take away from John's time, so we want to get right to it. So Walter, I'll turn it over to you to introduce John, but I just want to remind everyone that we will have time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up through John's presentation, please by all means just pop them in the Q&A icon down there, and we'll get to your questions at the end. So Walter, without any further ado, I'll let you introduce the man of the hour.
Well, thank you, Ted Stanley. We are proud and pleased to have John Powers back with us. John is I was going to say is a fixture in the Woodland, but that kind of, fixture is something that is permanently attached to a building or a piece of property, which is not very flattering. So we'll just say John is a well-respected longtime resident of the Woodlands who worked for the Township and its predecessor organization, the Woodlands Community Service Corporation, for over 23 years and retired in 2022 as assistant general manager. But while he was working at the Township and its predecessor, he ran Parks and Rec. Is that right, John? Am I making that up, or is that part of your resume?
Right.
So John is uniquely qualified to tell us about the concept of Parks and Recs, how it's all started, and where it is today, and where it may be going in the future. So John, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ted and Walter. I appreciate the opportunity once again to speak to Township Future, and particularly about a subject that's very dear to my heart, which is Parks and Recreation in the Woodlands, and the background of the master plan and how great the Parks and Recreation opportunities, facilities, and the department is that's here. I do have a presentation that I'd like to share, and hope I can get this up here. Can you see that, Walter, Ted?
Not yet.
No, okay. Don't think I shared it correctly yet. Give me a second. I guess it's this one. Go. About that.
Well, yeah, there you go. Now you got it.
All right. So yes, we're going to talk about Parks and Recreation in the Woodlands. Not a lot per se about the department, but I think the background and history of how great the community Parks and Recreation is a lot of what I'll focus on. In the introduction, I want to talk about the abundance of opportunities that we have in the Woodlands, how that compares to national standards, the awards the department has won, and then about the master planning of how this all came to be and the funding behind that, and then conclude with the recreation programs that's so abundant here for all the residents, and then we'll end, like you said, with questions and discussions. In this introduction, it's not so much about myself, it's really a disclaimer that this information is really based upon public records that's readily available on the Woodlands Township website, including meeting agendas and minutes and reports and press releases and other articles, as well as the firsthand knowledge that I have while being employed by the Woodlands Township, the community associations of the Woodlands, the Woodlands Community Service Corporation, and all the predecessors that Walter mentioned. I did work for the Woodlands in that capacity for 23 and a half years, beginning as the park superintendent, and then was promoted to the Parks and Recreation director, and then the Assistant General Manager for Community Services, which did oversee the Parks and Recreation Department. So the abundance of opportunities that we have in the Woodlands regarding parks and recreation really, I think, is the foundation of the quality of life that we all enjoy here, and the benefits of the parks and recreation amenities, programs, and services. The benefits are endless. Here is a synopsis of the what the department operates, maintains, and programs, kind of the inventory. And I know many of you have heard snippets of this before, but to go over it, there's 220 miles of hike and bike pathways, 200 miles of streetscapes. These are the thoroughfares of like Woodlands Parkway, Research Forest that the department maintains. 4,445 acres of open space, which equates to 38.3 acres of open space per 1,000 residents, which is way above the national average. I'm going to speak to this and this other one here in a minute. 150 community parks with all kinds of amenities, which is one park per 788 residents. That's 155% above the national average. We're one of the few communities that operates a adventure course as a department function with Texas Tree Ventures. There's 90 playgrounds, 80 tennis courts, 70 lakes and ponds, pavilions, sports fields, basketball and volleyball courts, 14 community swimming pools. Nowhere in the world that's got 120,000 people have 14 swimming pools, plus spray grounds, boathouses, and 2 recreation centers, and just dozens of great annual special events. This is another way of looking at it in a different scenario, but might be a little easier to read for some. Again, 150 parks, 4,445 acres of open space. Tennis courts, swim teams. There's 4 swim teams for youth. It's just a wonderful palette of wonderful amenities available to all of our residents. This is a 2018 Park and Pathway map, which is not produced very often anymore because it's hard copy, but it's just a way to see all of the parks by village and how they're laid out. All those little dots are parks. The brown lines are the 220 plus miles of pathways. It's through that. And there's a matrix that went with the Park and Pathway map showing all of the amenities, the major amenities by parks, with tennis courts, basketball courts. It has bathrooms, it has parking, it's lighted facility, dog park, all those kind of things were on the Park and Pathway map. Now things are up to date in the new world, and it's all an interactive map that people can go to the Township website at that link below, and it's a GIS map that the IT department and the Parks and Recreation department created together. And you can go to each village, to each dot, click on each park, each amenity, and get all of the different functions of the park, the opportunities that are there. And it just makes it very, very nice and easy to maneuver through the community and learn about all of the parks and what they provide. I mentioned the national standards. And earlier this year, the National Recreation and Parks Association put out an agency performance review. They surveyed thousands of parks and recreation departments across the country and got their statistics, their demographics, collected all of that into a report. And one interesting piece of this, of their findings, is this infographic that talks about the average residents per park, acres of parkland, percentage of full-time employees. And so you see the numbers that the NRPA collected from around the country. These compare to the Woodlands as such. For residents per park, where the national average is 2,287, the Woodlands Township has 788 residents per park, which means there are 3 times as less people per park, meaning they're less crowded, they're not overused. Acres per parkland per 1,000 residents, 10.8 acres per resident. Here in the Woodlands, it's almost 4 times that much of parkland per 1,000 residents. And then the residents per playground, as I said, there's 90. National average is 3,758 people per playground. Here in the Woodlands, it's about a third of that, 1,333. So there's a lot more playgrounds per person. Then it talked about full-time equivalent employees. This includes full-time employees and seasonal employees that accumulate into a full-time. And per 10,000 residents, the national average was 8.9. In the Woodlands, it's double that, more than double it, 18.76. There's a lot of full-time equivalent employees dedicated to Parks and Recreation, thanks to the Woodlands Township and its predecessor boards. The percentage of full-time that are dedicated just to operation and maintenance, 46%. Here, it's almost 100%. Only about 6.3% of the full-time employees are in administration. The rest of them are dedicated to operation and maintenance. That's incredible. Then the expenditures per capita, $94 an average per capita for operating parks throughout the country. In the Woodlands, it's more than double that. $220 per person is dedicated for operating expenditures per capita. And keep in mind that a lot of this is contracted services that the township does for streetscape and park and pathway maintenance, but that's a very high number that provides a very high standard and quality of maintenance. And then revenue. The revenue for operating expenditures that is brought in by departments across the country is about 25%. In the Woodlands, it's almost 32%, which is very high. And in fact, the Woodlands Parks and Recreation Department can be very proud and applauded for having the recreation programs be 100% cost recovery. So providing these concerts and youth programs and athletic programs are covered 100% by user fees and sponsorships. And then in aquatics, for the aquatics programs to operate those 14 pools, they're 50% cost recovery. That's a goal that's been in place by the boards of the township and the community associations for a long time, where in most communities, that's probably 100% funded by the city or the municipal purpose district, where here its cost recovery is 50% for aquatics, but overall it's 31.58%. Those are astounding numbers that the community should be proud of what the Parks and Recreation Department in the Woodlands Township is doing. That has led to a plethora of awards over the years. And I'm not going to go through all of them. Over the last few days, I did accumulate. I've got about 4 pages of trying to go through the years. But there's 3 categories that I wanted to share with you that I feel is most important for the Parks and Recreation Department. And the first one is the Gold Medal Award that's given each year by the Texas Recreation and Park Society. TRAPS is the professional association in Texas of all of the people that's involved in parks and recreation in every kind of agency, whether it be a school district, a municipal district, a special district, college, whatever it might be, military. And as you can see, the Woodlands Township Parks and Recreation Department has won the Gold Medal Award 4 times in the last 2 decades. That's quite an accomplishment to do that. Another award that I think a lot of people might not really realize, but I believe is really incredible accolade for the community, was back in 2003 when the Woodlands was recognized internationally as an award for livable communities in the Nations in Bloom competition. The Woodlands was only one of 32 communities that were invited to compete after winning it nationally. And so this group of people, some of which you may recognize, Bruce Tuff was the president of the Woodlands Community Association. Joel Derrickson was the president of the Woodlands Association. In the back is Sherman Yale, who was the general manager of the community associations at the time. And Kelly Dietrich, who was instrumental in putting together this presentation, the application, and all the videos that went with it. And then 2 representatives from Apeldoorn, Holland, where the competition was done, and the executive director of Nations in Bloom. That award is coveted by communities all over the world. And the Woodlands got second in its category only because of history. In 2003, the Woodlands was a pretty young community, and history was one of the categories. And a community in China that had been there for several thousand years beat us out on that. But it's a great award. But the granddaddy of all is really the gold medal award from the National Recreation Parks Association with the grand plaque. This is the best of the best throughout the whole country. And in 2019, Dr. Chris Nunes accepted the award for the grand plaque from the NRPA. Chairman Bunch was chairman at the time, President Don Norrell. You see Director Dr. Ann Snyder showing off the award one day back in 2019. Those three categories just exemplify how great the department is at the upper level. There are countless other awards that's been given by landscape associations, park design associations, innovation and programming awards, aquatics awards, lifeguard safety awards. It's just incredible, the accolades, and it's just too much to mention here. There's a web page on the Township website that lists more of these that I'd encourage you to go to. So how did all this happen? How did this great inventory with this plethora of opportunities happen? How did that happen and why did it happen? Well, it's because of Mr. Mitchell. George Mitchell's vision, his mission about what the Woodlands could be and would be, and we owe it all to him and his vision and the planning that went into the Woodlands. It began really with the project agreement that funded the Woodlands with the HUD Department of Housing and Urban Development back in 1972. Here's some excerpts from that project agreement with HUD, which talked about open space and recreation in the mature system. It'd be developed in phases with residential development, providing attractive open spaces, permanently reserved according to purpose and usage, each resident having several recreation options, including open space, activity areas for tennis, golf, swimming, organized sports, pleasant natural setting, offering all kinds of opportunities. It went into pretty specific detail of what was going to be offered to the community. It went on to long-term developments of what's going to happen in the project, and these would be presented to the secretary at the time, Secretary of HUD, for approval. So it was quite an extensive process of planning in the agreement from the very get-go. It goes on for several pages. I welcome you to go through it. This is on the Township website with the mission and vision and the original agreement of the Township of how all of this parks and recreation amenities, the preservation of the forest was envisioned not only in 1972 in the original agreement, but in the very designing of the community. Ian McHarg is a preeminent landscape architect that authored the book Design with Nature, and it was his environmental preservation philosophies that set the groundwork for drainage, how parks and forest buffers and woodlands and wetlands would be protected. This is a schematic, if you look at from March of 1966, that was done by one of the original consulting design firms. And in the legend, you can see that there was dedicated areas for parks and open space and schools, and all of that was part of how the Woodlands was going to be laid out with the streets and its pathways and the dedicated areas from the very beginning. That evolved. This is a better colored, more finalized map a few years later. But even there, the green space at build out was listed, and you can see the number of forest preserves, the acres, and then the parks at build out was to be 125 and pathways at 220. So that has been exceeded far and beyond what the original plan was. Some may have seen Roger Gladys's inside story of creating a better hometown. And he is quoted here as from the very first, planner set aside 25% of the total land area, where the agreement was really 23%, declared it off limits for building. lakes, golf courses, forest preserves, parks, and national wooded buffers between man-made developments gave the Woodlands that very special look than the typical suburban development. And then Ian McHarg is quoted in here where he says the Woodlands found that they could love profits and trees at the same time. And I believe that to be the foundation for the success of the Woodlands. We know from our residential satisfaction surveys for decades that trees is the number one thing that's the most important to the residents. And the master plan and the vision and the management and administration of that has proven to be very successful, not only for the quality of life, but financially, not only for the developer, but for other businesses and the people that live here. In 1992, we talk about how this all works. There was a mutual benefit agreement between the Woodlands Land Development Company and the Woodlands Association. The Woodlands Association was just recently created after the Woodlands Community Association kind of reached its limit. We'll talk more about the mutual benefit agreement maybe at another meeting. But in that, it talks about the standard recreation package. And so the standard recreation package was going to be the part that's germane to the whole community with shared amenities, so that no matter where a resident or a member of the community lived in any association, it would be mutually agreed that everyone could use all the parks and pathways, and that they would all be maintained in good operating order, and they would be equal no matter what village you lived in or in what part of the village that you lived in. This is the listing of the recreation package, and it kind of demonstrates the hierarchy of parks that was the basis for how parks were planned and designed. Pathways, neighborhood parks, area parks, and village parks. And it had the activity and the equipment that would be provided in each one of those parks. And you can see there what that would be for each one. Neighborhood parks, would be closer together, smaller in size, with picnic tables and pathway connections. Area park would have basketball courts and play fields, a parking lot. And then the village park in the first phase would have pavilions and tennis courts and volleyball courts. Once there was 500 dwelling units, DUs, that are occupied in the village, then the construction on the pool could occur. And that has held true throughout all of the development of the 14 swimming pools. This is dates of how the villages were opening, beginning, of course, obviously with Grogan's Mill in 1974, Panther Creek 77, Indian Springs in 84. So, in 86, in 82, when the MBA was done, Indian Springs was just beginning and Cochran's Crossing was just shortly there behind. So a good portion of the community had not been developed yet. So in talking about the hierarchy of parks, this is the base for how the layout, land plan, and service areas were determined, not specifically way in advance, but as each village was coming online. The blue pins are the village parks, and the red pins are area parks. I didn't list the neighborhood parks because there's a ton more, and it'd make the map real difficult to see. But from these next couple of slides, you'll kind of get the idea of how the spacing of plans and the phasing of parks was to be. So in this hierarchy, there was a park service radius to where a village park would service about a 1 mile radius or a little closer. And therefore, any resident could go a mile about and be able to access a village park. That's the largest of the parks beside a townwide park like Town Green Park or Rob Fleming Aquatic Center. So in the village park, there's a pool, tennis courts, basketball courts, a sports field, play field, playground, etc. So all these red circles indicate the 1 mile radius around a village park. Then we add in the area parks, which its radius was a 1/2 mile. Those are the yellow circles. And so in some of the gaps between a village park, you'll have area parks that help to fill that in. And so there was like 14 village parks, and I think there's 17 area parks. And then you add in, over 100 neighborhood parks and ponds, and you have a lot of opportunity for parks and recreation in the community. And it's just a graphic representation of that. So how did all this get funded? All these parks and recreation amenities, these great facilities for residents and tourists to enjoy. Well, there's a lot of funding partnerships, and of course, beginning with Mr. Mitchell and the Woodlands Development Corporation, and then the associations, the Woodlands Community Association, the Woodlands Association, the Woodlands Community Owners, Commercial Owners Association, the Town Center Owners Association, the Municipal Utility Districts, the Woodlands Community Facilities Development Corporation, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And I'll just briefly talk about how some of these applied. So in the early days, between the development company and the WCA, it was funded by homeowners assessments. The development company would provide the land, they'd provide the design and the construction administration, but all of the park construction was funded by the homeowners assessments. Crossvine Park, Loggers Hollow Park, some of the earlier ones in the Grogan's Mill area. Then they began to get grants. And if you remember the language in the HUD project agreement, they indicated that grants and funding from state and federal agencies and Land and Water Conservation Fund has been a real popular, stable grant source for decades of funding parks and other facilities. And so WCA partnered with the Land and Water Conservation Fund to fund some things like the Mill Bend Loop. Then they got into tapping into the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and their Texas Parks and Recreation account. That was done through the MUDs because the WCA and even the TWA wasn't eligible to apply for a grant with Parks and Wildlife. So they used the MUD as the governmental entity to obtain the grant. And then there were use operation maintenance agreements for the association to maintain and operate the agreement. And so for like a Sawmill Park, a MUD 6 was a partner, underwriter, sponsor. Creekwood was MUD 7. Those agreements were like 40 years, and after which then the association, or now the township, assumed the whole ownership. Here's a list of a number of those. I don't think it's all of them actually, but you'll see a list of the grants that were given by Texas Parks and Wildlife, all underwritten by a MUD. So which means that the MUD owned the property, fee simple, and then provided the use operation maintenance agreement to the relative association to maintain it. Over $4.5 million over the years was granted to the association to help pay for that. And then the development company and the community association, WCA or TWA, paid the other half. In these grants, just so people understand that they are public parks, they're permanently dedicated for that in perpetuity to only be used for public recreation, and you cannot discriminate based on residents. You can't say, well, it's just residents only. It's public dollars, public money. Another funding source was the Woodlands Community Facilities Development Corporation, which was created in 1986. And this is a 2009 990 that was submitted. It's a public document. And you'll see that the description of the organization mission is to promote the health, safety, common good, and social welfare of the residents of the Woodlands, Texas, by developing parks, pathways, playgrounds, and other amenities. And in it, it mentions that the revenue received for the use of utility easements facilitates the provision of utilities to the residents of the Woodlands, which improves the health, safety, common good, and social welfare. And that revenue was used for the construction of parks to enhance the health, common good, and social welfare. So the privately owned utility easements by the Woodlands Development Company, that revenue went to the Facility Development Corporation, nonprofit organization, which then was funneled to help fund the parks and pathways and pools in the Woodlands. Not all of them, but a number of them since 1986. I did just want to mention that grants still continue. Just last year, the Parks and Recreation Department got a $75,000 grant by NRPA to build a bird blind in George Mitchell Preserve. So the staff there and the township board still are very aggressive in pursuing grants. It does become more challenging when you are the gold medal award winner in the whole country, and you've got more amenities, programs, and services than anybody else for you to be granted a grant, but they still are very successful. Another funding agreement, which really is current, is the Comprehensive Community Service Agreement between Howard Hughes and the Woodlands Township. And that agreement kind of brings the mutual benefit agreement and other agreements into one master agreement that covers streetscape maintenance, standards on covenants, and then the construction and recreation facilities, and how those are shared and what the 5-year plan would bring as far as future development. I think that 5-year plan is just about done, but in this last year, the township budget in the 2023 budget presentation, there was $1.1 million that was dedicated in reserves for the township share of new development of capital projects with the developer. So there's still a substantial amount of money that's being funded for new projects. You know, another thing that makes the Woodlands Parks and Recreation Department so great and the quality of life is they're always current, meeting needs of people in all kinds of levels, with dog parks and skate parks and BMX parks and disc golf and Texas Tree Ventures. And, you know, there's so many things where communities struggle to just have the basic playground and maybe a basketball court. We're very fortunate here that the department has stayed current. The boards of directors have supported being current and relevant in all of these. And that's what makes us really unique, because we have these special amenities. And with that comes programming. You know, this is the action guide, which is published by the department a couple of times a year, and it's 36 pages of thousands of programs and events that are available to our residents. You know, if you want to fly, fish, learn to fly fish, or Tai Chi, or learn Spanish, all that's available through the department. There's a table of contents is available online, but it goes through all the aquatics programs, the summer camps, which hundreds of kids attend Bear Branch, and the Rob Fleming Recreation Center. There's a huge tennis academy. Pickleball is growing like crazy. There's lots of programs for all of those. And again, the action guide is available online, and you can register online as well. One of the programs I wanted to highlight, though, is the aquatics program, and specifically the Learn to Swim program for kids 6 months to 12 years old. If you didn't know that drowning is the leading cause of death for children, more children between the ages of 1 and 4 die from drowning than any other cause. And then for children ages 5 to 14, it's the second leading cause of unintentional injury, death after motor vehicle crashes. And so I implore every parent, everyone that's listening, that you know, is to help kids learn to swim. It's such a tragedy that would happen, and there's no reason for it. The classes are very affordable. They're 7-week classes. They're taught by highly trained professional water safety instructors, and I would encourage people to do that. Another aspect of the Woodlands Parks and Recreation, what they're responsible for, that is, again, the #1 reason why people have moved here, is the trees. And long ago, it was determined that we needed a forest management plan to help guide the leaders, decision makers in the community on how to manage the growth and the health of the forests. And so in 2000, this plan was created. It was adopted in 2003. It's had its updates and revisions several times, and it's had some subsets of lake and pond management and wildlife management that was created as well. If it's not, if we don't have the trees, it wouldn't be the woodlands. And I think that's one of the utmost priorities for the department and the community. And the boards have supported it with reforestation and hazard tree removal throughout the years. With that, I think I'm kind of done on that part, and we'll leave it for some questions and discussion.
Very good. Thank you, John. What a great presentation, and we really appreciate all the hard work you put into it. Of course, I know you used to eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff before you retired, so I'm sure it came very easily to you as you were putting together the presentation, but we can certainly see all the work and dedication you put into it, so thank you for that. While we're waiting for a few questions to come in, I did want to go over a couple of items that you talked about and maybe get some clarification and or just make a couple of comments. And Walter, chime in whenever you need to if you want to say anything. But you referenced the web page and the website, the Woodlands Township website and the Recreation Department webpage. It's a very interactive page. If you haven't been there, go to it. If you're looking for a particular park, it's real easy. You click on the village, it lists every park that's in that village, the amenities that are in that park, the location of the park and everything. So, you know, all 150. And now Dr. Nunes told us last night that they're going to be dedicating the 151st park. So we're either at 151 or 152 now. So we've already gone up another park just since the website was updated last. So, but it's a very, very interactive piece to work with and a very good way to do it. So if you're looking for a park, I know several residents over the years have tried to and make it a goal to go to as many parks as they can. And they would go to the list, just start checking them off and trying to get to them with their families. And I think that's a very good goal to try to do for a family, especially with young children and can go to the tot lots as well as the other larger parks. So check out the website on the Recreation Department's website. I think it's very, very instrumental. Compliments to you, John, and to Dr. Nunes, and to now John McGowan. I think the three of you have been the only parks directors that at least I know of. And I've had the pleasure to work with all of you over the years, as has Walter. And, you know, we've seen not only the Woodlands grow, but we've seen the development in the Parks and the Recreation Department and just the professionalism by which you guys have operated that department. It's just been incredible for not only us who are involved in the community, but for the residents who just enjoy the amenities. So thank you for that. And also to Dr. Nunes and to John McGowan as well. But I just wanted to say what a great job you guys have all done in putting that all together. So thank you for that. And then you kind of closed out with, you know, the Woodlands is always current and relevant. And it's amazing. Again, Walter and I both go back a long ways, and we both served on our respective boards. I served on the TWA board, and Walter served on the WCA board. And, you know, we used to take these parks into their respective villages, into the associations, the community associations, and just add park after park after park over time. And, you know, I remember discussion on the dog parks. I remember discussion on the skate bowls. I remember discussion on the swimming pools and so forth. And one thing I can say about the Woodlands Recreation Department in particular is that, you know, they've always been current, relevant, and innovative. I mean, they're still always looking for new ways to accomplish and to appease what the residents are looking for. And just what you said a minute ago, John, about the pickleball being a big popular sport now. I know that's been a little bit of a sticking point to try to accommodate all the pickleball players, but I know from experience that we're going to get there and that everybody's going to get what they need through the Parks and Recreation. So not only thank you for putting together this great presentation, but thank you for your years of service to the community as it relates particularly to the Parks and Recreation Department. So thank you for that. Walter, I see we do have a question. If we want to get to the questions now, we can certainly do that.
We have a question, and it is, are there any parks in the gated communities in the Woodlands?
Yes. Carlton Woods and Carlton Woods Creekside both have parks. At one time, before the township, the Community Association Parks and Recreation Department maintained the park in Carlton Woods by contract at no cost to the WCA or TWA or WCOA members. In fact, it was a revenue stream. But the Carlton Woods Association recognized that they might not be well suited for managing parks. And so when it first opened for a few years, the Parks and Recreation Department maintained that for them. That ended a long time ago. Those are not counted in our list. The 150, 151 are the public parks available to all people.
All right.
And Ted, I want to thank you for mentioning the Chris and Dr. Nunes and John McGowan. You know, what has made the department great has been the support of the boards of directors, the elected volunteer directors that have been very supportive of the staff and the things that they bring forward. And there's probably not another department, I couldn't nail this down, but that has as many certified parks and recreation professionals and certified playground safety inspectors and certified parks and recreation executives than this department. They are truly professionals and dedicated to the community and to the profession. John McGowan, for example, began as a lifeguard in his teens. And he went on to college. He got his master's degree, came back for a while. He went to another aquatics facility on the East Coast, spent some time there, learning and growing. He came back, and now he's the director of the Parks and Recreation Department. What a story. And of course, Chris Nunes came here from Colorado, and now he's the chief operating officer. It's just a great story. It's been a great system. All of the employees of Parks and Recreation and Environmental Services, all the departments really, and not just Parks and Recreation,
Right.
of the township staff are true professionals and committed to what they do and committed to the Woodlands. And we're very fortunate to have all those great people.
Yep. We've again witnessed it over the years. I'm sorry, Walter, go ahead.
Well, I have a question, and curious about these big community-wide events like Ironman. Does the Parks and Recs Department play a role in those type of events?
A small role, yes, because of the host venue sponsorship agreements that are with Ironman and the marathon and maybe the arts festival. The department becomes the lead liaison between the township and those organizations in providing communication coordination, some in-kind services to each of those. But it's obviously a recreation type special event, and no one does those better than the Parks and Recreation Department. And so they work very closely with Ironman and the marathon to help pull off an event that's great for all the participants and the spectators, but it's safe and has the least disruption to the community as possible. Of course, can't do those either without the county and Commissioner Nowak and his office, as well as Visit the Woodlands that brings those in, and the hotels and hotelers. It's a community thing, but the Parks and Recreation Department is kind of the link between those and the community.
Okay, thank you.
John, won't you take a few minutes and talk a little bit about the 4th of July parade? I know that wasn't part of your initial intent and content here, but it is coming up soon, and I think it's very important. And maybe discuss a little bit about the role that the Parks and Recreation Department and the Woodlands in general, Township, plays in the partnership with the 4th of July parade.
Be glad to. Thank you for the opportunity. I was hoping this slide, the last slide, might prompt some kind of question about fireworks on the 4th of July. I'm very honored and privileged to be a part of the South County 4th of July committee that puts on the annual parade this year, Tuesday, July 4th, 9 o'clock in Town Center and the Market Street. And You know, it's the 47th year of the annual parade. It began years ago in the 70s by the Lions Club, and then was transferred to a group of volunteers, nonprofit organization that's just continued on. It is a close partnership with the Woodlands Township. The parade would not happen without the township's direct financial funding and its in-kind support. And the Parks and Recreation Department, Dr. Nunes, as well as Angel Nix, are very integral in helping pull that off with administration and promotion, tents, tables, chairs, all those kind of things that's involved with the parade. Now, I can't speak for Dr. Nunes and the special event group, but you know, the Woodlands has the biggest firework display on the 4th of July than anywhere else north of Houston. There's 5 different locations that will be a venue. This is a picture of Waterway Square, and the fireworks this year won't be like those because this was before some of the big structures were built, and they were in a different place. So now at Waterway Square, since the Weston's there, they're lower level fireworks. But at North Shore Park, at Rob Fleming Park, there's great displays of fireworks for the Red Hot and Blue Festival. Before that is Splash Day, and all the pools will be having special events and themes, and the lifeguards really go out of the way to make it very special on that day. So after the parade, which is at 9 o'clock, you can go to Splash Day in the afternoon and then go to Town Green or North Shore or Hughes Landing or Creekside to see the fireworks, and have at Waterway Square, Town Green, Hughes Landing, North Shore, and Creekside Park, Rob Fleming Park, to see the fireworks and hear the concerts. It's a great day. It's been one of my favorite holidays by far of any of them, anywhere, anytime, is the 4th of July in the Woodlands. Of course, the night before is the symphony and the Star Spangled Salute, thanks to the Howard Hughes Company and the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion. So we have a great time to kick it off on the 3rd that night.
Good.
That help?
Thanks. Yes, thank you, John, and thank you for mentioning, because I was going to follow you with that Red Hot and Blue Festival and the fireworks, and I think they call it the Red Hot and Pool Splash Day. I think it's the little cute name they put to it, or maybe it's Red Hot and Cool. I'm not sure, but I think they call it Red Hot and Pool, where the pools are available for people. I think the season ticket holders and so forth. John, you know, you were talking earlier about the certification, I guess, if you will, of many people in the department. But, you know, the professionalism of the Parks and Recreation Department really goes all the way down the line to every person who works in that department. As the president of the College Park Village Association, at several of our events, I have the opportunity to interact with some of the staff who are bringing out chairs and tables and help us set up our events. And these guys, you know, at every level, are just truly dedicated, hard workers, very professional and very pleasant to work with, and, you know, really do anything that we ask them to do. So they truly get it. They truly understand the importance and the viability, if you will, of the Parks and Recreation Department. So when I say it's the crown jewel of the community, you know, I think it really is. I mean, we have a lot of great aspects of the Woodlands, but based on everything that you've talked about, all the awards that we've won, and, you know, just the development of how the Parks and Recreation came along and where we are today, it truly is the crown jewel of the community. And we're very grateful and blessed to be able to have that in our community at such a level, at such a grand level as that. So again, kudos to everybody involved. Walter, anything else for John? Any other questions that popped up or anything?
No, he's wowed them. He answered every question I guess anyone could possibly have. So no new questions have come in.
Well, good. Well, John, I don't want to take your thunder away from your presentation, because you did an excellent job. But I do want to close out with just a minute. We'll get back to you, John. But I do want to close out, or before we close out, I want to just kind of talk about Township Future for just a minute. And so, Walter, let me share my screen for just a second here and see if I can share the right screen. And I think it's this one. because I want everyone to know that, you know, we do these presentations and we hope that we can bring people along and give information and some very valuable information by very professional people who know what they're talking about and can carry the banner, if you will, for us. One of the objectives of Township Future is to advocate and educate on topics that are important to the residents of the Woodlands, and Parks and Recreation, of course, being one of those. So we developed a speaker series years ago to talk about various aspects and bring various content to you guys. And can you see this opening screen of the Township Future webpage?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just our opening screen, but here's our speaker series category. And what we've tried to do is all of these presentations that we've put together, we finally have found somebody who can literally update this for us. Not almost in real time, but very close to it. So if you just look at this page, this is the recreation presentation we're doing today. It says video coming soon. Hopefully we'll have this up tomorrow or the next day. But if you go back, you can see Dr. Null when he did his presentation on CISD by simply clicking here, and it'll bring you to this video, the ones that we were recording. We were very honored to have John talk about the Performing Arts Center back in April. And then Walter and I did a presentation on residential covenants back in March, and we're working on the video. Tammy McCrae, who is our tax assessor and collector, she was on here talking about the tax exemption for the Woodlands residents. So we'll have that video up very shortly. So we're working on updating the list of all of the videos so that we have the library up to date, if you will. So if there's any topic that you missed or any topic that you're interested in and seeing, by all means, you can always go back and look at these particular presentations, if you will, and for the topic. And so, John, we'll have yours up again, like I said, very shortly. But with that, I do want to thank John one more time for being with us tonight. Although John doesn't currently work for the Woodlands Township, he really is all-knowing, all-seeing, all-knowledgeable as it relates to township matters. So we're very grateful to you, John, for being here. Our next presentation, we don't have one scheduled for July because our typical night is going to be, I think, the 3rd or 4th of July. So we're going to skip July, but we have a good presentation come up in August. We're going to talk about not only the Woodlands turning 50, but various organizations throughout the Woodlands are turning 50 this year and next year. So we'll be highlighting some of the organizations in the Woodlands. And then, you know, as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll get into the election season. We're going to talk about the CISD bond issue. We're going to try to bring you some information on that. And then the candidates as they are developing for the township race that's going to be in November. So look to our speaker series in the future. We, again, hope to bring you some good, pertinent information. Walter always says at the end of our presentations, if there's any topic that you want to see or anything that you're interested in that you think would make a good presentation, please let us know. Explore our website, visit our Facebook page. We're always looking for people to help with us and to also share information with us. Walter, I see we got a couple other questions on tap. So before we close out, let me stop sharing my screen and we can get to those questions.
Well, there was just a compliment from Cynthia. Great to have John again. And then Richard Franks wanted a copy of the presentation, but then he said, well, Ted just answered that question. So,
well, there you go. We try to cover it all for you guys. So once again, I'm going to head over to Walter and let him close us out. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, John, one more time for your dedication and your commitment to not only us, but to the community in general. We really do appreciate you. You are a blessing in our community. So thank you for that. So with that, we are out of here for tonight. Happy 4th of July to everyone. Be safe. Attend the parade. Attend the Red Hot and Blue Festival. And with that, Walter, we are done, I believe.
we are. So we'll see you all in September.
August.
That's right.
Yeah. And we'll put the information out.
August. Okay, I got it. All right. Good night, everyone. Have a
good night. Good night.